created in the public meeting. Call the meeting to order, please. Mr. Coder, will you offer us pledge of allegiance?
May we stand, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You may be seated.
Certification of the closed meeting.
Resolution of certification of the closed meeting of May 18, 2017 pursuant to Section 2.2-3712 of the Code of Virginia, 1950 as amended.
So moved. Second.
Board Member Bouchard?
Yes.
Board Member Brooks Buck?
Yes.
Board Member Byram?
Yes.
Board Member Mitnick?
Yes.
Board Member Skeeter?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Copeland?
Aye.
Chairman Dobransky? Motion carried.
Unfinished business. School board's approval of financial plan for next year. Dr. Whitney.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. As you recall, we scheduled this special meeting to hopefully adopt a budget. We purposely scheduled it after the City Council meeting, which took place last night. The hope was that we would be fully funded based on the City Council's adoption. As you all probably know, they did give us the additional $2 million that was request, haven't fully funded our request. At this time, I'm going to call to the podium our Director of Finance, Ms. Wendy Forsman, to give you an update on what we are suggesting, because there is one suggested change based on what you have approved. So as we request that you adopt the budget, we will be requesting that you approve the change that's included here. Ms. Forsman.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Just gonna, maybe it's gonna advance, let's see. No, it might not. Hold on, let me just step back here and advance it. Okay, I'm sorry. Good morning again. I just want to remind everyone the approved budget that was sent to the council was a total of $160.9 million. That was a 3.08% increase for our operating fund budget, which included the $2 million request from the city, increased request from the city. The grants fund decreased slightly, and our food service fund increased slightly. So the total budget increased by 2.64, and this is the budget that you approved and we sent to City Council on April 1st. City Council has now approved their budget, which includes this budget, and they approved it fully with the $2 million that we requested. Again, I just want to remind everyone the state revenue changed by $2,052,524, and the local appropriation request was $2 million additional, and federal and other revenue increased by $166,000. So from last year to this year, the total increase in our revenue was $4.2 million. This slide depicts, again, the history of state funds, and we just want to highlight again that from 2008-09, we are still well below, and state funding, the 17-18 is well below the 2008-09 state funding still. We're still just about $3 million shy of what we were receiving way back in 2008-2009. As Dr. Whitney said, there was only one change to the approved budget based on input. And Dr. Whitney, do you want to say a few things? All right, well, the change to that was the teacher scale will now change across the scale by 2.5%. So a teacher who's currently on step 1 will move to step 2. And the difference between the salary of $40,677 and $41,694 is 2.5%. So teachers always move each year. Their years of experience matches the step they're on the scale, -1, because the scale starts at 0. Okay, so I just want to make that clear, make sure everybody understands that.
And when we say they move each year, quite naturally, we're not referring to that they automatically get that step increase. But as far as their position on the scale, it moves.
Every year.
In some instances, you remember the years we didn't give an increase, the scale changed to where they received the same pay during those years, but they did move to year 7 if they were on 6 or whatever the case may be. You'll note also that if we were to maintain our current teacher scale, and if teachers moved up 1 step, the majority of our teachers would not have received a 2.5% increase. So when we look at what's being proposed here, it does include every teacher receiving a 2.5 increase, which includes, that's part of the step in addition to the increase in general. So if we change, the major changes, you may recall the first scale between years 0 and 5, there was a larger increase because of recruiting efforts. We've moved away from that. My recommendation is to maintain a 2.5 across the board for all teachers with the exception of 29-plus years. And the 29-plus years would receive a 1.5 cost of living adjustment.
People who are above the scale.
Above the scale, right.
People who are above the scale. So we have an approved scale that goes through 29. Anyone that would be above that would get the 1.5% cost of living. The same thing with the support staff, and then permanent part-time staff would receive a 1% increase over current year. The rest of these items remain the same as what you approved. The total does increase slightly to $4.272524 million, and that's because it costs a little bit more to do that top piece. So our total revenue is $143,333,300. It's a lot of threes. And the expense changes by $54,000 in order for us to implement these changes. Where would we get that $54,000 for next year? We have a grant that we normally applied for. It was based on the age of our buildings. We've applied for that grant every year for those buildings. We've now done the work that grant allows us to do for all the buildings of that age. So we won't be able to apply for that grant next year because we don't have any buildings that we haven't worked on that are older than the age the grant requires. So we used to have to transfer a grant transfer to match that grant. According to the grantor, we had to match it by $54,000. So we've reduced that line in the budget by $54,000. And that line is on the same page as the technology instruction. So if you go back in the back of the budget book and you look at technology instruction, you'll see a grant budget transfer line. It was $209,000. It now is reduced by $54,000. And again, this is the proposed raises for the budget as changed by Dr. Whitney.
And again, I can't stress enough, the major changes, teachers across the board will receive a 2.5% increase, support staff, all non-teaching staff, 2.5% as well, permanent part-time, a 1% increase.
Questions or comments by board members?
What defines permanent part-time?
I'm sorry?
What defines permanent part-time?
We have some employees who are part-time, and the reason we say permanent part-time is because they come on a regular basis. Other part-time may come as we call or need them.
Those would be your 3-, 4-, and 5-hour cafeteria workers, your part-time teacher assistants who work generally 21 hours a week, consistently work 21 hours a week, your custodians who consistently work 21 or 24 hours a week. We have both. Those kinds of employees who are there every single week in our school, but only on a part-time basis.
What, if you know this, what percentage of our teachers and staff are above 29 years?
I don't know the percentages, but I can give you exact numbers.
Oh, well, that's good.
Exact numbers, again, don't include any current year retirees because we don't have that information fully yet.
Sure.
But currently, we have 88 teachers that would fall above the scale next year.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say this, that we've had much discussion traditionally at the top of the scale, and it's interesting to use the term top of the scale because it's really over the maximum amount. Traditionally have only received a cost of living during the times that we give raises. But we've had considerable conversation about modifying that for future budgets. And in other words, they too would be included. It's not in this proposal, but it is something that we are exploring.
You said 88 teachers. What about support staff, or do you know that?
I do. And
Okay.
support staff at this moment are 101.
Okay.
Again, that's based on when I pulled the budget information, and so some of that might have changed. But at the time I pulled the budget and the numbers that you're looking at in this budget, there were 101.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments by board members?
So with the teacher at the top of the scale of 29 plus, their increase is 1.5% above the 65,409?
They would receive, they're currently at 65,338. They would receive 1.5% more than that. Look at the current year scale.
Yes.
Current year scale 65,338. They would receive 1.5% more than that as they moved off the scale.
That's above 29, not
Yes.
including 29.
Right. For instance, if you're at 29 this year,
Right.
next year you would have 30 years of experience. So you would move off the scale because you've got more than 29 years' experience, and that person would receive 1.5%.
So in reality, 1.5% would still be much more than a person on a fixed income who got the 1.5% increase this year.
Good math.
Anybody else? I'd like to make one general comment.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, just to have this correct, we have 2.5 all the way down as an increase, but if you look at 28, you said 29, 28 is 1.52?
28, if a person is currently on 28, they're at 63,814, if you see
Right.
that? If you look at 29, next year, they would move to 29, that would be 65,409, and that's a 2.5% increase.
Those are plus and down.
If the person is currently on 29 plus in the current year, that's 65,338, they would move to above the scale next year, and that person would receive a 1.5%. Remember, every year, teachers move. Whether the money moves or doesn't move, the teachers actually move, because, again, their scale is based on years of experience.
Let me just be, okay, so if a teacher's teaching this year and they now, at this moment, have 29 years of experience.
Right.
Then at the end of the school year, and according to this budget, they don't have 29 years' experience, they have 30 years of experience.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay? But that's off our scale, because our scale
Yeah,
only
I
goes to 29.
understand, I just,
So, if you could help,
That's right.
okay.
somebody who was at 29 plus this year was
Correct.
making 65,338.
Yes, sir.
Next year, they go off scale.
Correct.
Is the 1.5 on top of the 65,338?
Yes, sir. Wherever they are currently, we would become 1.5% more than that.
How much would be to keep putting them on a regular scale?
At this point, if we added steps to the scale, the first year would cost right around $200,000. And every year thereafter, because you have an extra step, it would cost you
An additional $1,000.
$200,000, yes, sir.
Is there a reason why we weren't able to give the people at the top of the scale the 2.5?
Well, I think, just as she said, it would be 200,000. And traditionally, when you have a scale, when we've had a scale, if you went beyond that scale, we only gave a cost of living.
And that's a very common practice in school divisions. We pulled the...
It's probably about half and half when we look at the regional area. Some give the increase across the board, some only do it based on a cost of living. About half and half.
I am concerned that our most loyal employees are getting shortchanged.
I would think so. That's the reason why they offer after 30 years you can retire. If you look at the state, when the governor Waller was governor, he offered a program where teacher who had 30 years, he gave them 6 more years so they could retire. So I think that the system is resonating to the point that if you stay over 30 years, then you get 1.5 for cost of living, which is pretty good considering the person who retires gets far less than that, if I'm making myself clear.
I think so.
After 30 years, then you work because you really want to work, basically, as I said. I don't think you're shortchanging anyone.
Well, of course, you could look at it as 1.5% of 65,000 is, and I'm not good at math, but is probably more than 2.5%
Yeah,
of
that's right.
$41,694.
That's
So
right.
if dollar for dollar, at the grocery store, the person at the top of the scale can afford better the food there than the one at the bottom of the scale. Which, I don't know whether that's fair or not, but
Well, I think,
if it has to do with making a living,
too, if we look at, because all of us have been teachers, if we look at the fact that this is for a 200-day contract, it doesn't look quite the same as it would if they were, even though you're paid in 12 months, it's a 200-day contract. And the only thing I wanted to make clear is that as I look, both support and teachers are getting the same thing, so.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Anybody else? I'd like to make a general comment. I'd like to thank the city council for funding us fully for this year. We appreciate their help here, and we hope that we'll continue to do that because I know that we're a growing system. And for the city to grow, we're going to have to grow with them and be right there with them, so we appreciate their help here. That will go on to the next phase, and that would be
It's an action item.
action item. This is an action item. We need
I move that we approve the budget as presented,
as presented or as amended?
as amended. This one,
as
the
amended.
one that we're looking at,
Okay.
as amended.
As amended, okay. I'll second that.
Board Member Bouchard,
Yes?
Board Member Brooks Buck,
Yes.
Board Member Byram,
Yes.
Board Member Mitnick,
Yes.
Board Member Skeeter,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Copeland,
All right.
Chairman Dobransky,
yes.
motion carried.
So let's get action in closed meeting personnel report.
Well, good. I move for the adoption of the personnel report.
Second.
Board Member Bouchard,
Yes?
Board Member Brooks Buck,
Yes.
Board Member Byram,
Yes.
Board Member Mitnick,
Yes.
Board Member Skeeter,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Copeland,
All right.
Chairman Dobransky,
Yes.
motion carried.
That having been said, there are no more comments to be made. We'll adjourn the meeting. Thank you for coming today for the budget.